Awesome. All right, so we're officially kicked off. I'm Matt Bassuk. I'm the Director of Technical Solutions at PartsSource, formerly the CEO of Invert Labs. And Invert Labs is a extended realities training company geared specifically towards technicians. Quick show of hands, how many people in the room are technicians? Okay. All right, so I like to get to know you guys a little bit during these sessions. I like to get a little bit of audience participation. So I might ask a few questions, just quick hand raise. How many people have ever done virtual reality in any sense? Ever put on an Oculus Quest? Ever? Okay, that's crazy. That's excellent. So what we're seeing is about 50% of US adults have had some kind of XR experience, whether they put on a Quest and played Beat Saber, they went to Sandbox VR and played, zombie shooting games, whatever it is. But about 50%. So in this room, looks like we've got quite a bit more have had an experience. So I think that number is trending up, which we'll talk about as we get there. But another quick question: how many people have done anything training related in virtual reality? Anything specifically? We got one. What was it, if you don't mind asking?
GE telemetry during COVID.
That's actually what I was going to follow up with. I heard that one was a bit of a challenge, but yeah. So telemetry. Anybody else that done anything? Planetarium, maybe stargazing. Okay, interesting. And that's actually in line with what we see. When we poll the general public, it's about 10% of U.S. adults have had some kind of training experience. So we'll come back around to those statistics later. I'll kind of tell you what we're looking at in the industry, specifically in our industry, as far as XR training. But I'll give you, I got a video here, you guys can kind of see what we're going to talk about. But just to give you some background on Invert Labs, we started Invert Labs in 2022. We came out of the College of Biomedical Equipment Technology. Anybody familiar with College of Biomed? A few, yeah, okay, some familiar faces. So the College of Biomedical Equipment Technology is an online program. It's a accredited college that's both a certificate program and associate's degree program. I was the director of learning technologies for them for about 6-7 years, and then so during COVID times, probably when GE was running their telemetry XR program, we had kind of all of our externship sites shutting down. It was essential personnel only. They looked at me and said, "Hey, Matt, you're the learning technologies guy. Go figure out how to do virtual reality, see if there's anything to it." And so we started doing some rapid prototyping in 2021. And then by 2022, we were showcasing at the AMI exchange, and I believe it was in San Antonio, which is where we're based out of, and got a lot of traction. Got a lot of traction with the interactions. At that time, we had just piloted a contrast injector module, and we got a lot of attention for it. And so we said, okay, this kind of has its own legs. We really think that this has an opportunity to bring training in a new way to our industry at large. And so we peeled off from the College of Biomedical Equipment Technology and started Invert Labs. Shortly thereafter, I brought in Aaron Hanna, who is our Chief Technical Officer. Him and a couple of small, we got the team very, very small, him and just a couple others, we got a little bit of traction. We started shipping out headsets to, it was education programs, ISOs, health systems, and so, quite a big audience. And then in May of this year, we were acquired by PartsSource. So you see the PartsSource logos, you got PartsSource, pens and notepads. That's all thanks to our parent company, PartsSource. So, okay. So this is one of my favorite slides. How many people are familiar with the Gartner Hype Cycle for emerging technologies? If you're not familiar, this is the same cycle that every single new technology goes through, right? So think about a new technology, something that's top of mind, probably on front of everyone's mind is like AI. AI, blockchain, Web3, all of these new technologies, when they come out, they go through this same cycle, and it starts with an innovation trigger, which is somebody has a great idea. It's a new technology. It's going to change the way we're doing X, right? It's going to impact us in ways we haven't even thought about. Everybody gets really, really excited. We have all of these, new startups happening. It's in every news cycle. Somebody's talking about AI. Probably, how many people have heard the term the metaverse? How many people got real tired of hearing the term the metaverse? Right. Same thing. And what about generative AI? Yeah. So same thing. You get all of this, peak expectations. You hit this peak at some point. We call it the peak of inflated expectations. And then what happens? We fall off this beanie baby cliff, right? So, all of a sudden, it wasn't as cool as we thought it was. It didn't do all the things that we promised it was going to do. And so we come down back to reality and it was like, oh, that was a fad. Like maybe there wasn't anything to it. However, really, really great technologies find this slope of enlightenment, and then they move past to the plateau of productivity. And so things that come out of this trough of disillusionment are things that we find utility with, something that's actually useful. How many people have, well, we've got these on our badges, these little QR codes. You remember when these came out? They were everywhere, but they were useless because they didn't do anything. And then they actually didn't start getting traction until maybe COVID, when we had to use them for our menus, which I hated, by the way. But wherever there's like an actual use case for the technology is where you find technology starting to stick and starting to take hold. And every technology is going to go through this. And if you look at this, I mean, this kind of looks like, did anybody buy one of these guys? Who knows what those are? Yeah, so NFT, so that's a Bored Ape. And they were trading for $1 million if you wanted to. And if you're not familiar with like the blockchain and NFTs, it's a non-fungible token, but basically it's an image that, as far as the ledger is concerned, as far as the the blockchain is concerned, you own it, right? Anybody can screenshot it and put it on their presentation, but you technically own it, and that costs you in these, for these particular ones, is like $1 million, right? Well, now they're worthless because the utility for owning those Bored Apes is kind of not really there. However, if you were to say like blockchain, and I'm actually a proponent of blockchain, I think that the technology is going to be really, really great, but it has to be useful, right? You have to use it for something that matters. So think about like, if we actually started putting things that mattered on the blockchain, like credentials. You went to the College of Biomedical Equipment Technology, you got a degree. You went, we're going to put that on the blockchain. Or you have IP, right? So some kind of copyright, you put that on the blockchain. Then we're actually starting to use technology for things that matter. And so what we're seeing is, we got all kinds of new technologies that we're being inundated with. Some of them are sticking because we're finding that utility, and some of them, we'll see. Some of them we're at the top of the mountain right now. So thinking about like generative AI. How many people use ChatGPT on a regular basis? Let me flip that. How many people are not using ChatGPT on a regular basis? That's fascinating to me. And I'll talk a little bit about like adoption and kind of like how people, as a society, we start to adopt new technologies. But I always find it fascinating that like, I think of ChatGPT, I use it all the time. I use it for everything. But about only half of the people in our world, in TechNation, in this room, are using it on a regular basis. So we'll come back to that and talk a little bit about adoption in a minute. But any questions on the hype cycle? Okay, so here's my premise. This is the new one. So that one is 2023. This is the updated one. Check this out. We got generative AI way up here. So if you need to make a video of a battleship and floating in a cup of coffee, well, you can. But what good is that, honestly? we may fall off the cliff on generative AI. However, who believes that AI is going away? It's not going away. I mean, that's one of those technologies we're going to cross this trough very quickly because people are already finding really great use cases for it. Generative AI, maybe not, I don't know. I think the verdict's out on that one. But in general, every new technology does this. And my premise is, and we're already seeing this with virtual reality and immersive extended realities in particular. So this is a Google trend line, and if you go to Google and you type in a search term, then it tracks how many times that search term's being pinged, and then it'll give you a trend line over time. And so this one goes from 2010 to 2022. And what do you notice? It looks very similar to the same type of line we saw, right? Very much like that hype cycle. So what happened in 2011, or is that in 2013? Facebook bought Oculus for $2 billion. Then we started seeing the video game companies getting into virtual reality, and so you got Samsung Gear, you got the Oculus Rift come out. Anybody put on an Oculus back in 2015? A couple? Okay. Well, so it started to get really, really popular, and particularly with like video games. I mean, people think of video games when they think of VR. We kind of hit this peak in 2016. We all thought that this was going to be the next big thing, and then things started to cool off, right? We got a couple peaks here. We got some new systems were announced. Facebook rebranded to Meta. Everybody started using the term the metaverse until Apple decided we're going to call that spatial computing. And then the Apple Vision Pro was announced at the end of 2022. And so what you're seeing is we did go through this like really big hype cycle. We had all these promises that were made to us. We kind of lost interest. I mean, unless you're an avid gamer, you probably weren't rushing to go get the new Oculus device. However, now you're starting to see this trend. If this was to keep carrying over, you would see this continue going up. And the reason is we're finding new uses for the technology, and the technology started to mature, and it's coming out of that trough of disillusionment into being a productive technology, specifically for training, which we'll talk about our applications, but what I'd like to do is level set, right? So we threw out a bunch of terms. You heard me say a lot of different words just now. I want to level set and make sure we're all speaking the same language really quick. So we'll talk about the differences in all those terms that make up extended realities, what we call XR. You know what VR is. Who knows what this is? Beat Saber. Yeah, call it out. So Beat Saber, the world's most popular VR game, is virtual reality. The hallmark of virtual reality being that it's full immersion, right? If you put on a headset and you go play Beat Saber, you're in another world. You're in Spaceland with sabers in your hands, and you can't see the world around you. You're fully immersed. And so that is the hallmark of virtual reality. So if I say VR, that's what I'm talking about. If I say augmented reality, who remembers the summer of 2016? Right? And there's a lot of different applications for augmented reality. But in 2016, we're running around with a smartphone, and we're all trying to catch Pokemon out in the streets, right? Right. Well, okay. The thing about that that technology is it's a digital overlay on top of the real world, and that's the hallmark of augmented reality. So you're augmenting the real world, but the primary feature of augmented reality is a device, right? So you've got a smartphone, and these are kind of very oversimplified terms, but just for the sake of our conversation, this is kind of how we'll frame it up. So think of any filters, overlays, Snapchat filters, or anything that's on top of the real world. That would be augmented reality. Then you've got mixed reality, and what is that? We're just mixing these two, guys. This is, it's in the name. But mixed reality is basically you're putting digital overlays, but you're doing it with a headset on. And so there's some nuanced differences to what that is. However, mixed reality being like augmented digital layers on top of the real world with a headset. So if I say mixed reality, that's what I mean. And then lastly, Apple, they think different. They have spatial computing. What's the difference between mixed reality and spatial computing? Nothing. It's the same thing. But Apple's different, and so they want to come up with their own terms. So we got to let them. How many people are Team Apple? Okay. How many people are Team Android? The real technicians, I see. Yes. All right. So here's some examples. I want to just paint a picture for you. This is one of our modules. So shameless plug. This is a Zoll R series defibrillator. That's an Impulse 7000 Fluke defib analyzer, and we're doing a full PM procedure in full immersion. Right. So this is VR. I'm putting the headset on. I'm going into another world, and I'm going to interact with these devices. This is, anybody done the PM procedure on the OR series? It's kind of long, right? It's a lot to it. So this is a full module that's divvied up into about 12 different chapters throughout the, for every piece of that PM procedure, and it's designed to be kind of a show me, try me type of a walkthrough to learn how to do the procedure. This is augmented reality. This is my favorite augmented reality because I'm a Spurs fan, so I hate the Lakers. Well, the Lakers are losing, and the Pacers put on the jumbotron. They put this filter on the Laker fans' faces, which is hilarious. This is the best, peak society for us right here. Is we're making the Lakers fans cry on the jumbotron. Okay, here's another example. So this is basically somebody got an early SDK for the Apple Vision Pro, and they decided they're gonna gamify vacuuming their house. So they made chores more fun. So again, we're talking about like how do we drive utility for these new technologies. In this scenario, somebody decided that they can see where they vacuumed. Dyson saw that and they said that's great, but not everybody has an Apple Vision Pro, so they put the same type of application right on there on a smartphone that you can clip to your. Who would do this? Again, we'll talk about adoption in a little bit. Well, you're on the early adopter side, but there you go. That's it. It's a similar application, but one is on the phone, one is in the headset. Similar type of experience. I really like this example, right? Because you can extrapolate this kind of thing to what we do as technicians. Anybody ever try to build IKEA furniture? Anybody done it without threatening divorce? Yeah. It would be a lot easier if it would tell you exactly what you had to do at every step, right? And so this was actually done with the Meta Quest Pro. It was a single developer that got access to the camera API. Aaron's over there like, that's not real. But that one, they got access to the camera API and they built this little application for Shopify. Really cool application of the technology. Here's another one that's us. So this is augmented reality, so think smartphone. And this is the same type of thing. It's, okay, I have to do a PM procedure on an Alaris 8100. Well, I've got an 8015 and I got two 8100s on either side. And you can see it automatically finds, using object recognition, it'll find the two 8100s. Let's see if it, I'm just gonna replay it so we can watch it again. So there it goes. It says, okay, you got an 8015, you got 8100 on either side. We're gonna do a battery replacement. And this is a proof of concept. We only did the one procedure, but you flip it over, you pull out these 4 screws, you take off the battery pack, then you put the new battery pack on, put the screws back in, flip it back over, hit the power button, you're done. But that is an application of augmented reality for technicians. So I always tell people that, where the technology shines for like virtual reality, for full immersion, it really, really is powerful for training, for everything you're doing before you're entering the room. For augmented reality, it really, really shines for doing, right? I'm in real time, I need to know how to do this procedure. It's overlaying on top of my real world. And so that's kind of how we're applying these two different technologies. This is a cool one. I just pulled this together, or pulled this into the presentation because I thought it was cool. I saw it on LinkedIn. Check this out. So this is mixed reality, and this is real mixed reality because he's got a physical base to a pinball machine, and everything else that he's seeing in the game and everything is happening in his headset. And so a truly mixed reality because he's got multi-mediums, even at the hardware. So I thought that was really neat. I got to figure out where to get one of these too. Here you go. Here's another one. This is mixed reality as well, right? So we started off building a library, and I'll tell you more about our content library. But we started off building a library of immersive training. We quickly got to the point where it's like, it'd be really cool if we could have multiplayers, like have multiple people in the same experience, and if we could do it in mixed reality. Anybody go to the AIME Exchange this year? Well, if you go to the AIME Exchange, we usually have a pretty nice setup of multiple lanes going, but we have this one was in Phoenix, and we had these two students that came by and did this experience. This is a Philips Epic 7 cardiac ultrasound teardown. And basically these two students can both be looking at the same device, walking around it, handing screwdrivers back and forth and interacting. And that module works not only in co-located, but it also works remote. So I could be in San Antonio where we're at, you guys could be up here in Dallas, and we could be handing screwdrivers back and forth. So really cool application of this technology for what we do. And that is another example of mixed reality. Keep an eye on time here. Okay, so some cool stuff's coming out. And I want to tell you about it before we start to, weave this back into more of what we're doing. Anybody seen AI glasses? Anybody got any on? Sometimes people wearing them. I've got a pair here. But these are AI glasses. Some people might call them AR glasses. It's a bit of a misnomer, but there's different new technologies that are coming out, and all of this stuff is starting to muddy the waters of like what's really capable. So just to give you a quick landscape of the industry and where things are headed from consumer technology standpoint, there are AI glasses. So it's got a camera on it and it can see what you're doing, and you can ask it, hey Meta, what's the capital of Ireland, and it'll tell you, right? You've got heads-up display glasses. These are super cool. Anybody seen the new ones that Meta just announced? Anybody do the demo on them yet? I went to LensCrafters and did a demo on it. It's pretty sweet. They have this little neuro band, and you can like control gestures and flip through your photo reel or everything. That's a heads-up display glasses, right? So it'll put something in your view, and then this is a Even Reality's G1. That's a monochromatic display, so it's just like that green look on it, but it'll tell you, it'll give you some information. One of the coolest things that I've seen is like closed captioning or like teleprompter. If you want to, do a speech, it'll like actually put your speech up in front of you. Really, really cool is the language translation. So you could be having a conversation with somebody speaking a different language, and it's like translating what they're saying. That's neat. But that's not really overlaying onto the real world, right? That's just like a little display in your peripheral. So that's heads-up display glasses. Then you'll see these AR display glasses, and these are augmented reality. Anybody seen these? Maybe on an airplane sometimes. Basically, they're smaller form factor glasses. You put them on. They have this this pancake lens on the inside, so they look a little bulky, but a lot more slim than a Meta Quest. But what it'll do is it'll put up a big display screen, right? And it anchors the display screen, but it's just a big like flat panel TV. So you're not doing anything else. You're not getting any kind of creatures running around from the desk or like shooting zombies or anything. But it's cool for just having like a virtual display. So that's another thing you might see. Those are picking up traction. And then you've got full AR glasses, which is the kind of the holy grail of like, what immersive technologies can be. And so I think I've got a video on it just to, yeah, here you go. We'll let Zuckerberg tell you about it. These are kind of cool. This is what's next. I'm excited about it. So this is from his, the Meta Connect. This was at the end of last year.
Best people in the world to build these glasses. And the requirements are actually pretty simple, but the technical challenges to make them are insane. They give you glasses, they're not a headset, no wires, less than 100 grams. They need wide field of view, holographic displays.
So that's kind of like the display screens. Need to be able to see them through them too, make contact. But this isn't pass-through. This is the physical world with holograms overlaid up. Or if you want to be with someone who is far away, they're going to be able to teleport as a hologram into your living room, sit there right there with you. You're going to tap your fingers and bring up a game of cards or chess. So super cool. You see how it's like actually 3D, and these are all in glasses. I will jump forward really quick because we don't necessarily need to go through all of that, but really neat, right? So that's the difference. So we those are not on the market yet. They're targeting 2027. They're currently like $10,000 to make them, so they're trying to figure out how to make them cheaper. You will start to see a lot more heads-up display glasses, but the full AR glasses, that's like, that's the next thing. How many people would use that over their cell phone? How many people would trade in their cell phone? A couple? How many people would not trade in their cell phone for AR glasses? Okay. And everybody else, we're just gonna wait and see, right? All right, fair enough. I think it's interesting. Yeah, right. What prescriptions does it come in? But I think it's interesting because there's a lot of R&D going into new technology. I got a couple more things to show you. Like you might see these things. If you saw Ready Player One, you might know what this is. That's an omnidirectional treadmill. So this is full immersion, VR. You can walk in any direction through these ancient Greek ruins or through the streets of Paris at nighttime. And just cool, things to make these a little bit more immersive and interactive. It's a different kind. This is like an anti-static. There you go. Here's a different one. So this would be a bird simulator. I'm showing you guys because there's a lot of hardware that's out there. There's a lot of new types of whether they're haptics or these bird simulators. Like there's some cool stuff. Here's another omnidirectional like trackpad. Disney just came out with this. So think like Star Trek holodeck. I can walk in any direction. I feel like I would bust my face with this. Here's another one. These are like moon boots. Yeah, look at he almost ate it. I mean, I'd try it, but I don't know. So there's a new somebody's really bored. Actually, one of the coolest ones I saw. Oh, here you go, haptics. I always get asked about haptics.
The entire system fit on the hand and wrist, drive electronics, communication, wireless communication, and batteries. This glove includes high-resolution shape arrays for each fingertip. Uniquely, our haptic array is low profile and low cost, and yet highly expressive, both temporally and spatially.
So you can actually feel the penny in virtual reality. Pretty cool. This one's even cooler because you saw how big that glove was. Somebody improved it already. Now it's just like this small little application. So really, really cool stuff coming out. Jump forward a little bit. Check this out. This is from a couple students at the University of Chicago. They came up with this magnetic resonant like pulses to your brain to send sensations to your extremities, so both your hands and your legs. I don't know why the video is not playing. Oh, there you go.
And this is because this area of the brain that is spoiled is responsible for the sensation and movement from this left arm. That's the principle. And now let's move this spoil to another location this time around. The brain area that corresponds to.
Obviously, it's not ready for commercial consumer application. Do you see that?
Now move and you got sensation.
How many people would try this? Yeah, one. It's always one. I'll do it. Yeah, zap my brain, see if my arms move. All right. So here's another one, and I'll just kind of talk over this. So there's another group. They made this augmented reality contact lens, which is crazy because you just didn't even think the technology was that good yet, but it is. and somebody figured out how to put a heads-up display, that monochromatic green look, right on your lens. So he's holding a prototype. He's not actually allowed to put it on his eye, but he's reading through the Gettysburg Address with this on, on his eye. Pretty cool stuff. There you go. I don't know how they got this video, but this is kind of what it would look like. This company didn't end up getting their Series B funding. I think a lot of people were just like, hey, that's really neat, but why on the eye? Why not just glasses? So they'll come back around. But how many people would put that on their eye? It's always one. That'd be interesting. Okay, all right. So you guys have seen all of the new hardware, all of the cool gadgets that are coming out, kind of get an idea as to where technology is moving, where we're currently at. Maybe we're a little further along than you thought. Maybe we're not quite as far along as you thought. Technology is interesting though, and it's a very personal thing for us. Like if you're an early adopter on a technology, it's because it means something to you. If you're a late adopter, how many people have seen? Well, as a matter of fact, let me show you this video. This is Steve Ballmer in 2007. Who remembers 2007, right as the iPhone was announced? Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. Oh, hang on. See, if you've got YouTube videos, they don't play well.
$500 fully subsidized for the plan, because that was the most expensive phone in the world. And it doesn't go to business because it doesn't have a keyboard. Now, it makes out very well. We had a hard strategy that brings in the mobile device to the market today. We get the Motorola phone now for $99. It's a very people machine.
Okay. How many people have a Windows mobile phone? Right? Didn't think so. But Steve's not wrong, right? So in 2007, if we can rewind really quick, in 2007, what's he saying? He's saying, okay, it's $500, which is crazy expensive, even though phones are $1,200 now. And then he said it doesn't appeal to business owner or business clientele, which at the time it was like that was the market. Like we're going after it. Was, everybody had a BlackBerry, right? BlackBerry, why? Because it had a keyboard, and the keyboard was an email machine, and that's why all of the big companies, they wanted email machines. They wanted something that was productive. And the iPhone, Steve thought it was going to be a flop because it didn't have those things. So going back to, let me jump really quick. Hang on. So going back to the idea that technology is very a personal thing. The reason why the iPhone ended up taking off wasn't because it was the coolest, neatest tool that was out there. It was because they did something that nobody else had at that time. Anybody remember what it was? Full screen display. So that was cool. But what they did is they crowdsourced utility. They gave us the App Store. And I don't know if you remember, like we all had Blackberries and they were great because we wanted to send emails. They had physical buttons and that was awesome. But what happened was Apple figured out how to crowdsource utility. And if you want to get past that, that hype cycle and get to the plateau of productivity, you've got to have utility. It's got to be useful, right? And so I remember I was in college at the time. And so the coolest thing I had ever seen is I had an app that was like a Zippo lighter. And if you opened it, like it would have a flame and it would move. And then like you could switch over and you could drink a beer, like if you tilted your phone. The coolest, yeah, super useful. But that, yeah, that is what ended up ultimately winning the whole market over, is because now it wasn't just this tool is great for sending emails. Now it's like this thing can do anything you can think of, and we're giving the power to the developers. And the developers are going to tell us what it can do, and we're going to have all these ideas, and then we're going to go build those into the App Store. So now that everybody has an app, well, guess what? Now everybody's got an iPhone or a Pixel or a Samsung, you know, I see you guys. But everybody's got the iPhone because it was driven by utility. And so technology is a very personal thing. And you might be over here say, okay, well, I see that new full screen display and I want that, you know, because I value it. Or you might be at the other end of the spectrum over here. You say, you know what, you can have my BlackBerry when you pry for my cold dead fingers. Because, you know, but we all fall somewhere on this curve of adoption based off the technology and how it applies to our lives. And so it's not a one size fits all. You might be over here for one technology and you might be over here for another. Like, you know, I'm gonna go get those Meta glasses. Those look awesome. This is me. QR codes, no, thank you. Give me a menu. So you got to figure out where you fall on the spectrum for every new technology. But I just think it's interesting that you know, we might look at a technology and say, oh, okay, well, maybe one day. Like, I'm pretty happy with my cell phone right now. I don't want to switch over to have glasses. You know, it has to be useful. And what's interesting though is it doesn't matter really what happens. It doesn't matter what happens, you know, or how we fall on this current spectrum. Technology is going to move anyways, right? And ultimately, society is going to push us into a bucket, right? So even if you were the guy that said, I'm never giving up my BlackBerry, well, guess what? Now you're in line at the Genius Bar with all the blue hairs and, you know, 100-point font and asking for, you know, how does it work? So ultimately, technology is going to move and it will get adopted one way or another. Okay, so now the fun part. How much time we got? 20 minutes. All right, cool. I want to talk about how we're distilling this technology into what we're doing, what it is we're trying to accomplish, how are we making better technicians leveraging these technologies. It's no secret. We've been talking about this for 10 years plus. There's a massive skills gap in our industry and it's getting worse. Show of hands, how many people in this room are ready to retire in the next 10 years? In the next 5 years? Couple, yeah. So whenever I go out to do a presentation, mostly in front of technicians, I always ask a question. And I was in a room with 150 technicians in Philadelphia, and I asked the same question. I said, how many people are getting ready to retire in the next 5 years? And I swear half the room raised their hand. And I just looked at the director and I was like, what are we doing? Like, what are we gonna do about this? We have to do something. It's not going away, it's getting worse. I got a couple of statistics just to drive this point. 40% of our current workforce is over 55. 40%. 22% is over 60. We got 18% job growth between now and 2033. So hospitals keep opening. There's more and more roles. How many people are finding it challenging to staff their departments currently? Yeah, we have more work than we can find bodies for, and we're trying to pull bodies. Where are you getting technicians from? Real question. Other industries? Yeah, we see that a lot. I'm pulling these HVAC guys. Maybe they know how to, you know, do a PM on a defib. Like, and then you got to give them tools, right? So you're going to pull in these other industries and see, you know, try to find those technicians or electrical, you know, engineers that can do the job. But then you have to give them, you know, a baseline for the technician, for the work that we do as biomed technicians. Anyway, this is the problem that we're trying to solve, and we're not going to be a, you know, magic bullet necessarily, but we're using simulations and what we know about virtual reality training to try to be one tool in the toolbox to solve this problem. What we know about simulations are your retention rates go up. I mean, there was one study from Miami Children's where they had a control group. They did virtual reality training in one group. They had a control group, and after a year, they found that the group that did the virtual reality training retained 80% of what they learned. The group that didn't forgot 80% after a week. So retention goes up. Employees can be trained 4 times faster. And there's a couple different studies out there. Some say 3 times faster, some say 4 times faster. This one came from a Boeing study, so you know, I don't know. I don't know if Boeing's the right group to quote. But we know that it's faster, and that's you know, obvious, right? If you put on a headset and you're not doing travel, you're not setting up a classroom, you're not, you know, the logistics are cut out of the equation. More importantly, learners it's very effective. So there's 2 studies. Learners are 6 times less likely to make a mistake, and that came from 2 different studies. One was at the UCLA, one was at Yale. They're actually 20 years apart, which is an interesting note, because I can't imagine putting on a headset 20 years ago and watching a VR simulation in 15 frames per second. I'd barf. But they got similar results out of those 2 groups, right? So there was a group of surgeon residents, and in one situation they were doing a gallbladder surgery, and the other one was an intermedullary tibial nailing. I think I said that right. But basically your leg is broken and they got to nail it back together. But in both of those studies, the group that did the VR simulation before they did the real surgery, 6 times faster, or 6 times less likely to make a mistake. It was something like 3 times faster, and then something that gets overlooked a lot is 275% more confident. I have conversations a lot with like technicians who are getting new people trained into the field, and they're saying, you know, they're just not confident enough to go up to the equipment. They don't, you know, they've already been trained. They know what they're supposed to be doing. They just have no confidence to go do it without pulling in a senior technician. That we find that virtual reality helps mitigate that quite a bit. So let me move forward here. So this is what we're doing. Anybody been to RSTI? So that's Todd Boylan. He's a CEO RSTI training, and we've created this RNF room. This is a GE Precision 500D. You can see it's a 1-to-1 simulation, and this is the lab room, right? So we have a program with the College of Biomedical Equipment Technology and RSTI to do training on this device in a virtual simulated way. So really cool stuff. I like to show that off because I think it looks awesome. Like this is really cool. It's low res on this monitor, but you guys got to see it. And we're doing demos, so you get a chance. Come find me in the expo hall. So this is a stator windings test, and then a filament check on the. This one is the Philips Aliva, another RNF room. Anybody do any imaging? A couple. So, you know, going back to the skills gap and like how we're going to backfill those, we're trying to like have pathways to go from biomed into imaging as well. And there's a lot of high acuity modalities that we're going to go after, but yeah, everything from general biomed all the way up to, you know, MR and CT. I keep forgetting I got a clicker in my hand. Okay, so some more statistics. We talked about the retention rate. Well, these are the same statistics, just in a better slide format. There's Albert. I'm doing on time. I'll give you some time for question and answer. So this is an example of what that like intermedullary tibial nailing VR module looks like. You see faster completion rates, improved performance. I already talked about the studies, but there's so many studies out there, and there's more and more every day. So you know, the case is pretty compelling. However, we didn't just stop at whatever Yale did 20 years ago, right? We actually said, you know, we're going to go prove that this is applicable to training technicians, right? We can prove that this works for our audience. So what we did in 2022, and I kind of talked about like we got a lot of traction at that time. We were at the AME Exchange, which is in San Antonio. It was our backyard, and we had partnered up with Steve Mall from Mall Biomedical. Anybody know Steve? Steve's great, you know, top notch at contrast injector training. And we said, okay, we're gonna do a training, and what we want to do is we had 9 students, and these were students, not technicians, not, you know, any experience. They're mostly from St. Clair's in Ontario, which is James Linton's program, and they all came in and they wanted to know, you know, about contrast injectors. So they sat with Steve for about 45 minutes He said, this is what a contrast injector is. This is the clinical applications. This is how you turn it on. This is the parts of it. And then we said, all right, we're all going to go down to the VR lab and everybody's going to do the PM procedure on this device. So we ran through two different procedures. It was the teardown procedure and then the operational checkout procedures in virtual reality simulation. And we said, okay, who thinks that they can actually do this procedure in real life? And every student's like, yeah, we could do it. I was like, great, we're going to. So we took them all back upstairs and paired off these students. So we had 4 different MedRad stellents, and every single one of these students did the PM procedure in under 2 hours, which, if you know, that's basically industry standard for a trained technician. So we said, hey, this works. We got to do a lot more of this because this works. And it's really a compelling use case that really drove us into going after a lot more of this. I will let you hear it from the student smiles themselves. I apologize for the audio. It's a little bit hard to hear, but here you go. Who knows Justin? He's here. Go say hi.
To approach these issues in real life,
These are high school students from HOSA. All right. Let's see, what's next? Okay, so you saw a lot of students in there, and I'm not discriminating to the older generations. We found that some of the younger generations, they adopt this technology very quickly because they're on this end of the adoption cycle or the adoption curve, and we've had a lot of success with older generation technicians, but we're talking about a skills gap and an aging workforce that's phasing out, and we have to, find new bodies to replace those skills, those positions with new skills. We are very much targeting the next generation of technicians. So a couple statistics, we talked about 53 million U.S. adults have a VR system in their household, so probably a Meta Quest or something of that nature. 33% of U.S. teens have a VR headset, and of those, half of them are weekly users. And so, what is kind of novelty for us, as adults that are kind of watching this new technology come out, is like very much ubiquitous for the next generation of, teenagers and students. And I'm talking about even as young as like 8 years old. My daughter comes home from school and she's like, "Daddy, I just, fell into a black hole today at school." It's like, oh, okay. What do they got you doing? But they're doing VR and they're doing it for training. They're doing it for educational purposes. And so there is a big opportunity with the next generation to capitalize on that, because by the time they get into the industry, they're going to look at us like, if you're not doing VR training, like, why not? Where is it? Like, we're expecting it. So one last video to show you. This is the difference between Gen Z and millennial. How do you make a heart? How do you answer the phone? How do you hang up the phone? How do you take a photo? How do you roll down the window? So I hope that I made you feel old. But that's kind of the point, right? It's like look at technology, look at where it's headed, and look at who's going to drive where we end up going. You think about where you're going to land on the adoption curve, and if you're going to end up getting the Meta Orion glasses and ditch your smartphone, that's great. And if you're not, that's okay. Ultimately, we'll see you at the Genius Bar with your 100-point font. And when society outpaces you, like you'll be at the end of the spectrum, but you'll catch up. But that's why we're building what we're building. That's who we feel like is going to help us solve this skills gap. This is our platform. Just again to give you a quick and dirty. We have a library of modules. They're all biomed. General biomed with a few imaging modules built in. We're building quite a roadmap. And so this is our current library, all ACI certification or CEUs. You can talk to me about it later. This is our roadmap for this next year. So Aaron and Nate are in the back and they're gonna squirm looking at this. We're going after a bunch. But we're really excited because it's our goal to bring this to our industry because we're trying to solve the skills shortage. That's it. I wanted to give you at least a minute to ask me a question. But thanks for coming.
What are your challenges in trying to get these modules with equipment that's just coming up online, new MRIs and CTs?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. We're targeting devices that have a pretty good market penetration, just because we want the biggest audience for those modules. As they hit the ground, there's some stuff that's new that's out there that we have on our roadmap. It's not necessarily the first thing on the list, but as things start to become more popular and there's more technicians that are servicing them, then we're going to definitely add in the content.
Are you getting the pushback from the OEMs on trying to develop this kind of training because it would cut into their market share?
We've got really great relationships with a lot of OEMs, and some OEMs look at what we're doing and they're really excited about it, and other OEMs are like, well, I don't know, is that going to eat into our bottom line? It hasn't been a challenge yet because there's so much to go do right now, and so we've just kind of been sticking to the general biomed lane. But for things that imaging and all that, those are dynamic situations that we like to partner instead of compete. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was going to kind of comment on that. I think there might be some incentives for some of these OEMs to put their branding on some of these training tools, because if there's a young technician that's very comfortable with procedures with a Philips branded piece of equipment, when they have an option, they will go to that because
absolutely. And that's the relationships that we have with all the test equipment manufacturers. So you saw we got Pronk and Fluke and BC Group, and that's their mentality is like, yeah, we want our stuff in there because when technicians go through it, then they're going to want those devices that they learned on. Same idea, we invite the manufacturers to help us develop and be part of this. Uh-oh, I hit the wrong button. But yeah, that is very much part of our overall strategy. I don't know what this is.